Hello everyone, welcome DDA Day 2 here at the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety in Richburg, South Carolina, just a bit south of Charlotte, about an hour or so depending on how you drive. We are so privileged to have you again here with us. If you were not here yesterday, where were you? We missed you. For those of you who are with us for the first time today, we're glad, and if you're here for Day 2, just like you were for Day 1, we're delighted as well. I am product developer Armand Brody. This is our engineer, Chris Cioffi. And Chris, it's great to be with you today. We saw a lot of you yesterday, and I'm sorry, but you're stuck with me for the moment.
I think you're stuck with me more. No, I'm so super excited to be here today. Today we're talking about membrane roofs. Have a lot of knowledge about that, so we'll get deep into that.
I'm glad you have a lot of knowledge.
I hope I do.
I'm going to pick your brain in just a second, but first we want to take care of just a few items here. First of all, you are welcomed to check us out in the chat on your right-hand side. Pop your questions in there. We will do our best to answer those questions. Also, there's some activity going on behind me here. That's just a touch of what is going to come in July with our fuel break. So if what you see behind us is piquing your interest, stick around here at IBHS in July. We'll have some more for you coming up on that. We closed off yesterday. We're talking about your chat questions on the right-hand side, which we strongly encourage. And there was a question that we were going to discuss, that we're going to discuss now, Chris, that's related to the issue of flashing. So here's the question. The question is, can any and all flashing be retrofitted with cleats? That's the question.
That's a great question, Armand. So to start off, it would be cost prohibitive to go back and install cleats on these systems, but there are different ways that you can retrofit or reinstall. So the first more expensive item would be to reinstall. So install new flashing that meets ES1 testing. That's the pull test, and you want to do that for your site-specific conditions. So get a hired contractor who's licensed and insured to do that, to make sure that you have the right flashing being installed. But like we said yesterday, you get what you inspect, not what you expect. So you also want to inspect it too and make sure it's installed correctly. Now, going back to the existing, first you want to make sure that your cleat, your fascia is attached to your cleat. Go around, make sure it's attached there. If you can't physically attach it again, there are ways to retrofit. One way would be to install mechanical fasteners. So you could install them right through the fascia into the structure. Depending on what that structure is, you're going to want to center them 12 inches on center. That's our typical guidance for this. If you're going into concrete, use self-tapping screws. If you're going into wood, use wood screws and steel screws. Another thing to it, you want to use an EPDM washer, a metal-backed EPDM washer. But also make sure that the metals are all the same. You want similar metals, you don't want rust or erosion. So 12 inches on center, and that will be good for that. Yeah, so those are ways that you can help, fix your flashing. And
we have a helpful resource. Why don't you tell the members about that, our flashing toolkit?
So we have a flashing toolkit. There's 3 pieces to the flashing toolkit. One is the why. So it's a 2-pager that just tells you why flashing is important. Kind of highlights everything we talked about yesterday. The second part is how do you inspect flashing? So there's 3 different ways that you could actually inspect flashing. That's from the ground, so a visual inspection. The second would be drone footage. We know now that not every company is getting out on the roofs due to fall protection issues, safety concerns, and in this past year, COVID. So that's another way, is to look at drones, look at the flashing, see the condition of the flashing. The third and the best way that you can know your risk or what you have there is a physical inspection. So going up there, if you're tied off, pulling on that flashing, making sure that it sits tight to that cleat. So those tools are all available on our website. They're for members, and they will help you understand what you're looking at and mark off what you have.
IBHS.org, a useful and helpful resource for our members who are watching us anytime, quite frankly, but particularly when it comes to our flashing toolkit. Are we ready to transition now into talking about membrane roofs?
Are you ready?
I am ready, and I hope you are ready too.
I'm ready. Let's go.
Let's talk about it here. First of all, give me an overview of single ply membrane.
Okay, so we saw a little bit of it yesterday while we were looking at our flashing demo. That was a single ply membrane. So what you have is your roof deck, whether that is a concrete deck, could be steel, and then you have what we call insulation board, typically. Now, like we said, with residential, it's pretty similar, across the board. When we get into commercial roofs, there's a lot of different variations. So this is not the same for every single ply membrane roof, but just something that, just a visual. So you have your cover board that goes over your insulation board, and then you have your membrane types. Now there's many different membrane types. The three that I'm going to cover today are the most used. This is a TPO membrane. It's a little resistant to flexibility. They come in several different colors. I have white right here. That reflects UV, reduces the heat energy bill as well. So that's TPO. That is the largest market share out there. The second one is PVC. You can see it's a little more flexible than our TPO. This does very well in chemical situations when it's exposed to chemicals. So you're going to see these on your industrial settings. Because it's flexible, so when it's installed, it's flexible. So contractors like that for different installation issues. So when they're doing some intricate roofs. But then we have our EPDM, which is very flexible. It's malleable. It comes back to the same position when you pull on it. You can see I'm taking this in 3 different directions. And your EPDM are not good in chemical settings. So you won't see them on your industrial buildings, but contractors like them because they're so flexible. You can use them on intricate type roofs. So if you have some details that you have to get around that have some hard flashing as well, this is what you'll use.
Chuck Nicholas, we talked to him yesterday. He mentioned everything that roofs are exposed to. So much.
Yeah.
All the time.
Exactly.
Let's talk about the issue of aging and what aging of single ply membranes looks like.
Yeah, so all roofs age. It's out there. They're exposed to the elements. So you can be located in Florida, you're gonna get the heat, you're gonna get the salt water. You could be located in Pennsylvania, you're gonna get cold weather, snow, ice. So they're all exposed to different things. So single ply membranes all age based off location and what they're exposed to. Typical lifespan of a TPO membrane, anywhere from 15 years to 30 years. That depends on how it was installed, if it was installed properly, what is exposed to. So it can age differently, but typical aging issues that we see with them are splitting seams, so where they come undone, erosion, so where you start to get chalkiness over time. If it's not properly maintained, you get water buildup. So if you have ponding, dead leaves, you can get degradation of that roof cover over time. So they age. Add that to an exposure such as high wind across the whole country, you could have some significant issues.
The theme is that there is no place, wherever you are in the country, there's no place where your roof is not vulnerable with all the exposure that it's going to see and experience. There's no place where your roof is not vulnerable.
That is correct. They're all vulnerable to high winds. Just because it's in Florida, I mean, yes, you have hurricanes, but you could be located in the Midwest. We're seeing derechos, tornadoes. These high winds can, damage your roof cover. We saw it yesterday with the flashing, where it starts the flashing and pulls back your membrane, and then you go from there. So we're all exposed to high winds. Then you add the factor of aging to it, and then you could have a combined factor to it. You add aging, you add rooftop equipment that have not been properly maintained. They can cause damage to your single ply membrane. These can be easily punctured. So if you have flying debris, say a contractor goes up on your roof, leaves a tool while they're doing work on your mechanical system, that could easily puncture through this, and then that goes right to your cover board and down. So now you're going to get water intrusion.
You've mentioned in conversations we've had, and you just mentioned it 2 or 3 times just a moment ago, about roof maintenance.
Yes.
Which begs the question, how do we maintain our roofs?
All right, so goes back similar to flashing. You want to have a routine maintenance plan. So business owners, small business owners, whether they hire someone to do this or they could do it themselves, you want to do this at every season change and then after any big storm. That could be anything that causes, leaves to get on your roof, some branches. And what we want you to do is when you get up onto your roof, first, safety is priority. So can't stress that enough. Follow your company's fall protection guidelines. Make sure you're tied off. You want to make sure you're safe. But when you're up there, you can maintain your roof in several different ways. One, look for water, standing water. Standing water is a sign of improper sloping, clogged drains, improperly sloped gutters. So all of those can be issues that over time could potentially lead to some bigger issues than that. You want to make sure that your gutters are all cleaned out, no rooftop debris. So like I said, the contractor tools, branches from trees that have fallen around your building. You also want to keep those trees trimmed. Make sure they're not sitting over your roof. That could lead to the single ply membranes degrading over time as well.
I'm fascinated by the fact that every piece of information, every little detail counts.
Yeah, it's piece by piece, but it's the whole picture we're looking at. Resilience. How can we recover? How can we, stay ahead of the storm, make sure that we're going to be open that next day? And it's all these little tiny things. It's just being proactive. It's getting up on the roof. It's doing things that you can do. You don't need to hire a contractor to go, sweep unless it's not safe. But hiring a contractor is not that hard as well.
And I go back to what we heard Chuck say yesterday about resilience being an investment. That's so critical.
That is correct. I mean, you invest in your maintenance plans, you invest in upgrades, and you can be more resilient. You will get that back in after a storm. And this is just a perfect example in Tampa when Hurricane Irma. So I evacuated for Hurricane Irma, and the Taco Bell on our way back was the only Taco Bell open in the entire area. It had power. It was up running. So this one restaurant had a line that drove around 3-4 blocks of just cars getting in just to get food. Mm-hmm. So little minor things like maintenance and resilience can really help after a storm and keep your business up and running.
Let's talk about the susceptibility to, we talk about high winds, hurricanes, derechos. Let's touch on that.
Yeah, so like we said, all buildings are exposed to these high winds. So you look at derechos, it came through the Midwest, and we were seeing very, very high winds, and you see them for a decent amount of time. Hurricanes you see for hours, like we saw yesterday. We talked about how long exposure, you have damage to your roof in the beginning of a storm. It keeps getting pounded. But it's similar with derechos too. I mean, they were affected for a couple, an hour or so. It only takes a little bit of time for you to get enough water damage into your building. So when you start to lose your roof cover, it's a plethora. It's a cascading effect, and it's a snowball. It's a snowball effect. There you go.
What other factors might we be missing when we talk about how to be resilient? What other factors may come into play?
So when you are installing a new roof system, there are tested and approved systems out there that test the assembly as a whole. So they'll look at the roof deck, they'll look at if you have insulation board, cover board, membrane. They'll look at all of that as a whole. And then they will test it in their lab in a facility so you know how it's going to perform. You can install that on your roof. That goes, with the site-specific conditions and that internal factor of safety that they add to these systems, you can install a more resilient system.
How are single ply membranes susceptible to hail damage? So we've talked a bit about wind. Let's talk about hail damage now and how single ply membranes are susceptible in that area.
Yeah, so if we look at hail damage, when a hailstone hits single ply membrane, what you'll get is you'll see a little dimple and then you'll see some rippling effect from the outside. What that does is it's essentially hitting this, It's damaging the cover board behind it, and you'll see the ripple effect out from there. That is on a new single ply membrane. You add aging into the factor, I can easily tell you that an aged system getting hit by hail is going to perform less favorable than one that is brand new and installed. So you have excessive weathering done to it, and you don't maintain your roof cover, you could expect to see higher damage from hail. There are some things that you can do to install a more hail resistant system. You can install a UL 2218 class 4, which is done by using a steel ball test. So what they do is they drop the steel ball from a certain height. The heights vary based off of the amount of force that you want to put on it. So force equals mass times acceleration. The issue with this is that a steel ball hitting a single ply membrane may not be very indicative of what we see in the field. So we've done our own single ply testing here at the research center, where we were able to recreate hailstones. So we're going up to see how they fare as well. Another thing that you can do is install a system that is FM severe hail rated or very severe hail rated.
Is there anything else that we need to know from you as we talk about membrane roofs?
So there is one thing that you can do, and it depends on how your roof is actually held down or fastened down. So there's 3 different types. There is a mechanically attached system where you mechanically attach the seams down. There is a fully adhered system, and then there is a ballasted system. So ballasted are little stone rocks that hold down the system. We don't recommend those in hail-prone areas, hurricane-prone areas, excuse me, but they do fare well to hail. The stones themselves disperse the hailstone impact pretty evenly. Additionally, if you do use a mechanical system, what you can do is mechanically attach the insulation board down, fully adhere your cover board, and then fully adhere your single ply membrane. And what that does, it protects your hailstone from actually hitting a fastener, which you will see higher damage if it hits fasteners.
You are fantastic, man.
Thank you.
This has been awesome. I am so much more educated on the issue of single ply membrane and membrane roofs than I was before sitting down and talking to you. You said you had the information, and you do. You've
Interesting stuff, right?
Yes, it is. And I thank you for it.
Of course.